Hello everybody, my name is Elisa Baum and I'm Percona's Director of Product Marketing. We'll begin in just a moment, but first I'd like to conduct a bit of housekeeping. First, please raise your hand using the hand icon located in the GoToWebinar control panel to let me know if you can hear me. Okay, thank you. I see hands. Next, during this webinar, you will be on mute. Should you have any questions during the discussion, please enter them in the questions field within the control panel. At the end of the webinar, we will take time to answer as many questions as possible. Questions that are most relevant to the topic we're discussing today will be answered first, but those that aren't addressed will be answered in a follow-up blog post on Percona's MySQL Performance blog. In addition, a recording of this webinar will be made available to everybody within 48 hours, and I'll also send you the link to the slides. I'd like to thank you today for attending today's webinar, MySQL Backup and Recovery Best Practices, presented by Percona Remote DBA, Max Bubenik. In addition, Matt Griffin, who is Percona's Director of Product Management, will be joining Max for the Q&A part of the show. With that said, I'd like to turn the floor over to Max. Okay, Max, go ahead.
Hello, welcome to the Backup and Recovery webinar. My name, as Lisa said, is Maximilian Bubenik. I'm a senior member of the Remote DBA team, and today we will cover a few things about backups, and for example that why we need backups, the different type of backups. We cover that types. At binary or raw backups, we'll talk about logical backups, Binlog Mirroring, the different logs that backups need to grab a consistent snapshot. We'll see some samples, and at the end we're talking about best practices and tips on the way you need to, what things you need to take in mind at the time to plan your backup strategy, right? Well, at first, why we need backup? At some point, anything can fail and will fail. In that phase or that issues, we can have hardware issues, application bugs, operational mistakes, there are a lot of them. And for example, someone can ask you to remove something for your database. Please delete that row from that table that we don't need anymore, and later they tell you, hey, we already removed that row. Well, we need them back again. So for different things, we will need always to have backups. Most of companies or people think that slaves are enough for this, but well, with the slaves, the bugs and mistakes will be reproduced on the slaves as well. And also you can think on delayed slaves, but well, you can discover that a bug 1 week later. So in that case, you will need to recover that information from a backup, right? Depending on what kind of issue you are facing, you will need different kind of restores. You will need sometimes to restore a complete server, to restore a full DB, or maybe a complete table or a few rows. That will depend, right, as I said, on the issue you are facing at the moment. For that, we have different kind of backups. There are logical backups, that they are taken interacting directly with the MySQL server, like running selects and a few things more that we'll see later. That's logical backups end up being plain text files where you will have all the DDS to restore the schema of your database, and a lot of inserts to restore the actual data on that tables. These kind of backups can be taken in a remote server. They are slower than other kind of backups on large data sets, and sometimes it's the only option you have to take a backup. For example, if you are running this on RDS, or you have a hosting provided service, and this kind of things, your only option to take backup it's a logical way. The other option is the binary or raw backups. We will try to use them binary for now on. But for that kind of backups, you need to have access to the file system, right? Because we are backing up directly the files of the database and not interacting. Well, you will be interacting with the MySQL server, but in another way. We'll see this later. But you need access to the files of the database. That kind of backup need to be taken local. They are really faster than logical backups if we are talking about big data sets, right? Speaking about, I don't know, terabyte database size and this kind of stuff. Maybe the only option will be to take this kind of backups. This also will depend on the storage engine you are using. They are very dependent on that. And also you need to take care on the file system phase, right? If you are backing up that files and that files are corrupted, your backup will be corrupted. So you need to take care of that as well. And the other kind of backup is the binlogs. The binlogs are used for point-in-time recovery, and you can use them even for a single schema. Why we need that as well? Because we for example, are taking binary or logical backups once a day, once a week. That will depend on your solution. But in sometimes you will need to restore to some point, to some exact point in time, like, I don't know, Tuesday at 12 p.m. In that case, you will need the binlogs to back up that, to restore that. Well, binary backups. For taking binary backups, we have different options. The most common are Percona XtraBackup, MyLVM Snapshot, and MySQL Enterprise Backup. For Percona XtraBackup and most of the others, these kind of tools, they are really fast and are only limited by the I/O you have in your server, right? Almost have no logs within the server. And for XtraBackup, if you can use rsync option to eliminate that logs. That kind of tools, all of them need to grab a consistent snapshot, right, at some point. What Percona XtraBackup does, another does as well, is to take a flush table with read log and the end to end copying all the files that are not InnoDB, like myISAM tables, like RFM files, and for that it's need to grab a flush table with read log. We will see what is that later in this talk, but you have an option that it's rsync. That what will do this is, for example, without this option, XtraBackup will grab a flush table with read log at the end to copy all that files. Using rsync, the difference is that XtraBackup will do two other things runs. The first one without log to copy all that files, and after that we'll grab the flush tables and we'll run rsync again. That only will need to copy the difference between the first rsync and the second. And as this is in a very brief time window, this difference will be very small. So we are reducing the logs times a lot. It also can compress on the fly. We'll see this later. And it's the best option to restore full servers or setting up new slaves because they are pretty fast. Logical backups. For logical backups, we have two tools. The mysqldump, that is the one that came directly when you download MySQL, and the other one is Mydumper. mysqldump, it's a tool for general use. It's really simple to use, but you need to take care about a couple of things that, for example, if you use that in the default way, it will lock all your take the output to the standard output. So you can redirect that to one file, right? If you have a very big database, this file will be huge. And as it's redirecting to standard output, it's a really good option to pipe that to MySQL client. For example, if you want to move one table, one schema from one server to another. This is a very fast way to do that, as far as the data you need to move is not so big, right? The most important options on logical backups, it's, well, I say by default it's running OPT mode. This OPT mode use all these options by default: add drop table, add logs, create options, well, all of this. But the most important here is that it's using log tables. Log table will, what we'll do is to log, in this way, we'll lock all table for each schema while it's dumping it, and grabbing a log table will lock for each table on that schema. It will do that schema by schema. I mean, it will not lock the complete set of databases. It will do one by one. The other option that we can use for this is single transaction. In this way, we will avoid locking tables. In that case, we'll use a start transaction with a consistent snapshot. But here we will need to take care on non-IDB tables, like my ISAM and whatever order we will using, as this table will be not locked. So we can end up with an inconsistent snapshot. So take care on using that. The other options are master data and dump slaves. They are pretty similar. Both of them use flush table with read log. This is needed to grab the exact coordinates on the binlog that we will need to use after of this to, I don't know, make a new slave. The difference between them is master data will grab the coordinates of the, we grab the coordinates on a master server, and if you are taking a backup from a slave and you want to create another slave for the same backups on another server, you will need to use dump slave. That will grab the coordinates from the position of the slave on the master. Other interesting option is InnoDB optimized keys. That is a Percona server feature that what it does is, as you know, mysqldump creates in the file one create table and then all the inserts. What this option does is to remove all the secondary index from the create table and create an alter after inserting all the data to add all these indexes. This is really useful if you have a Percona server with fast index creation. Enable that will optimize, that will improve times in most of the cases. But well, you will need to test this if it's your case or not. That depends on you, on your table sizes, the number of indexes. But well, this decision should be taken running some test on your local data. Also, mysqldump dumps trigger and routines. By default, routines or store procedures are not backed up. If you are, obviously, if you are backing up the complete server, you should not care about this. But if you are dropping only one schema, you will need to take care of the routines as well. That by default, MySQL doesn't do that. The other option that we have for logical backups, It's a tool called Mydumper. Mydumper, it's a really good tool that it's faster than mysqldump in most of the cases, as it's multi-threaded. It's almost not grab logs when you have InnoDB tables. We will see that later as well. It have the ability to compress on the fly. It's internally inside Mydumper, so all the output file will be compressed. You don't need to care about it. But it doesn't handle views, triggers, and procedures. So far, we'll see in the future if Mydumper will handle this. And one thing that it's really important, as we saw earlier, is that it creates separate files for each table and one row per line. This is really important if you need, for example, to restore just one table, not a complex schema. Imagine trying to split all the mysqldump output file. We can do it, but it's a mess. In that case, you will have a separate file per table and also one row per line. What that means, that having one row per line, you can also write any script to grab any data you want, right? One of the Mydumper most important options are threads, where you can control the number of threads Mydumper will run. By default, this is 4. You can tell them the output dir. This is important because, at difference of mysqldump, the Mydumper output, it's not redirected to standard output, but it writes different files for each table or chunks. The two other options, rows and chunk files, are both to split the backup on different chunks. I will see what is the the big win using this. It can compress. It have a new option that it's less locking. We'll see what it does. And kill on queries that is used because, as I told you before, we will need a flush table with the log to log everything. And one of the issues with flush table with log is need to wait on selects to end, right? This is a really big issue for backup tools that need to run this, as a simple select can lock all your server for the time this select is running. So you can use this option to kill this kind of queries before grabbing the flush table with the lock. And also there is an option that is not on by default because it's new, just nothing for that, that it uses save points that will avoid, I don't know if you hear about the metadata locking that it's in place in MySQL since version 5.5. Well, that it can mess up all your backups and your production environment if you are running DDLs against tables while you are checking backups. We will see this later as well. As I mentioned, the chunks option on Mydumper is very interesting. Here you can see a small example. This is not real values, but they are good to see how chunks works with Mydumper. For example, if you are not running with chunks and you have, in this case, it's a really simple example, not a real one. Imagine that you have 4 tables and you are running with 4 threads. In this case, each thread will take care of one table, and we have one that is really bigger than the others. In that case, only at the end, only one thread will taking care of these tables. But if you use chunks with rows, in this case each table will be split in the number of rows we set that in that option. For example, imagine that all these tables have, the table A, B, C have 10 rows and the table D have 50, and we run with rows 10. In this case, when the first three threads end up dumping the first three tables, they will take care of the rest of the D table. In that case, we will improve times, as you can see, between this and this. We are dumping the same number of data, of rows or whatever, with a difference on times that it's really big. This is not always will impact your backup, but always will impact your restore as well, as each thread to restore with myloader will take care of each chunk instead of the whole table. Okay, chunks will work only in this case. So far they work only for tables that have indexes with integer values, right? It will take the smaller and the greater and will try to split the table in the same number of rows. But there is another option that is really useful as well, that is chunk file size. What it will do, it's to run like we are not using chunks, but it will split the output of the files in the size that you use on that option. So, for example, in this case, the table D will be split, I don't know, for example, if the table has 2 gigs and we are using chunk file size of 1 gig, that table will be split in 2 different files of 1 gig each. This will not improve our backup times, but it will do it for restore times, as 2 threads can take care on that table. This is also really useful if you have space issues, right, for your backups and you want to have link between backups, as these files will not change one day to another if that chunk didn't change in your data. We talk also about less locking. Without less locking, what Mydumper will need to grab flush table with read lock to dump all non-InnoDB tables. What that means that if we have really big MyISAM or archive tables or whatever that is not InnoDB, you will have your server locked for all the time that it's need to dump that tables. This new option, less locking, what it does is to create another number of threads that will take care of lock these tables in a separate way and will release the flush table with read lock. In that case, the time that we need to grab to get all the server locked, it's really small, as it's only the time to create that thread and grab the logs for each non-InnoDB tables. So, for example, here you can see that the bigger non-InnoDB table took 9 seconds. This is, again, it's not a real data, it's just an example. But here you will see that you will have your server locked for 9 seconds. Using less locking, this time will be like a second or less. It's just the time that the other threads need to lock all the other tables. The output, as I told you, of Mydumper, they are files, each table per file, per table. And you will see here one of the most important files of this that you need to take to validate that your backup is okay. it's one of the tests that you need. It's the metadata file. There you will find the position on the master and the position of the the slave, right? Show master status will show you. That's obviously depends where you are checking the backup, right? If you are checking in one master, you will see only show master status. If you are taking the backup on the slave, you will see show slave status as well. With show slave status output, what you are seeing there is a log file and a position, and that is the coordinates on the master. So you can use this backup to create a slave from the master or a slave for the slave where you taking it. The other output files, as you will see, this is a sample of one. It's the name files are database.table.sql. There we'll see something like this. As I told you, each row is one line, so this is really good if you, for example, need to grep all the rows for a single user. I imagine that you have a column here where you have the user ID. You can easily grep one big file to only have the rows for that user in cases like you, for example, need to restore only that number of rows. Or you can even, with little more scripting, you can even query these these files. And so instead to restore a backup, look at, for example, you need to find a day where before the bug, because some kind of condition. You can directly query the backup instead of restore one day, check if it's okay, restore the another day. You can do that directly in these files before restoring. The other option is binlog mirroring. Binlog mirroring, it's possible since MySQL 5.6. There we have a tool that is mysqlbinlog that have a new new options for this. That it's also work for 5.1 and 5.5. You can use this tool to do binlog mirroring of the master on any other server. The options for this new option are read from remote server, raw, and stop never. What it does is it works similar to a slave in the point of view of the master. You will not expect any more load than a slave can do. And what it does is to connect to the master, but on the output it will write, instead of write relay logs, it will write the binary logs as they are in the master. So this is really useful to have an up-to-date copy of all your commits on the master. Well, as we were talking before, all the backups tools needs to get a consistent snapshot of the data that we need to dump. For that, the backup tools use different kind of logs. One of them is log table with local. That what it does is that another sessions, another transactions, or threads of clients can read the table but can't write to them. So we are running with this kind of logs. Our master or our server being bucket can't write to the data. There is also another option that is local, that it's used by mysqldump and also by Mydumper, that use local. That will allow no conflicting inserts to only my ISAM tables. Why this is important? Maybe for mysqldump, as it have log tables on all the table, it's not a big deal. I mean, having local, right? You have all your tables logged anyway. But for example, if you are running Mydumper and you only have use my ISAM tables as a log tables that it's, for example, append only. Well, in this case, having this, you will not see any log at all. The other one that is needed for the binary backups, and in some cases for mysqldump, and for Mydumper is flush table with read log. These tools use this to grab a global read log. It's a log across the complete server. This sometimes it's a very big issue on POSI server that have log running transactions, as we say that before, and also it's require all the tables to be reopened, which can be another issue on BASI servers, and if you have a lot of tables. The other one is metadata locking. Metadata locking, it's another pain for backups, and this is since MySQL 555. Metadata locking, what it does, it's not allow DDLs to tables that are being used in transactions. What that means, you know, the backups, the logical backups need to grab a snapshot, right? For that, use a really long transaction that it's need for the whole time that we need to dump all the data. In that case, there is a new options there to try to reduce this issue. mysqldump in the latest version use this, and you can also add the use save points to Mydumper. That what it does is to run a rollback after each table to release that log on the tables. Well, as I tell you before, mysqldump by default use look tables. In that way, it will lock tables with local for each schema while it's being dumped, right? This is schema by schema. No, it's not a global lock. The other option you can use is if when you use lock tables master data on dump slaves, it will run a flush table with it lock. If you use the option single transaction, it will grab a start transaction with consistent snapshot. Here you need to take care about non-InnoDB tables to be consistent. If you, for example, have my ISAM that they are not being used, should not be an issue. And the other option is no logs. No logs can be used when you are, I don't know, maybe dumping only one table or that kind of stuff, but it's not a safe option when you are dumping a complete schema. Mydumper always will need a flush table because it needs to coordinate all the threads that will be running. So to get all the threads in the same position, viewing the same snapshot, it's need flush table with read logs. The other option that we have is less locking. That in that way, as I remember, as I told you, that create another threads. Well, these other threads, what it's run, it's lock table read local for non-InnoDB tables. Once it's grabbed this lock, it will release flush table with read lock and will run a consistent snapshot for InnoDB. Use save points will reduce metadata locking. As I tell you, this will not avoid 100% metadata locking, as for the time that it's dumping this table, you can see this kind of logs if you are running whatever DDL it's executing at the moment. For example, DDL could be an alter. Maybe you think, well, I don't run alters so often, so should not be an issue. But truncates as well will be locked by this, and the problem as well is that after this, all updates or insert or whatever is locked after this DDL. So you can end up having all your server locked. As well, Mydumper have the option to no logs, but again, without logging, we can't ensure a consistent snapshot. So this is not good if you are taking on a live server. Percona XtraBackup will grab a flux table at the end of the run. Again, this is to coordinate all the non-InnoDB tables. We can use rsync that will run sync twice to reduce this time, and no logs again will not ensure backups. For Percona server since version 6.5.6.16, we have a new kind of logs for backups that they are already implemented on Percona XtraBackup 2.2. On mysqldump, you have the option log for backup, and that will need to run with single transaction. And we hope that Mydumper will have this on 6.2 or 6.3. We will see. Let's see some examples. Using Percona XtraBackup. Capex, it's a wrapper around XtraBackup binary that it's needed to take a backup of the complete server, right? Because XtraBackup by per se, it just dump the IBD files. So if you want to dump it as well, RFM files and all the other files, we can use this wrapper, and that will help us a lot, and it's the recommended way to do this. A simple option is to take a backup. It's running Capex or sync to eliminate logs, and a slave info if you are taking this from a slave. It will write the output to backups, and after that you will need to, because these files that we have are not consistent, right? We were copying files for a live server that was running and doing modification during that time. So to get this backup useful to restore, we will need to prepare this backup using apply logs. It will get all files in a consistent way that we can use for restore. And once it's prepared, just running copy back, it will be copy that files back to be used on, again, on a slave or whatever you need, whenever you need to get this back. XtraBackup also have another option that is to stream backups. That is very useful if you need to, for example, restore, you need to restage a new slave. You can do this using the stream option that will be streamed to a single file. And in that way we can pipe this to a remote server, because as we said before, these backups need to be taken locally. So in this way you can take a backup locally, but at the same time be moving it to a remote server. Here is a simple example. For streaming, there are two options. One that we see here, that it's stream equal tar, that is the most simple one. But we have another option that it's xvstream. xvstream is another binary where this is piped between, that will allow us to compress and do this backup in parallel. This will improve times a lot. You will need to play with this, do your test, because the only downside of this, if you are compressing, you will need to at first extract and then uncompress. That will depend on your times, on your I/O, on your network, on your CPU. You will need to test your best options to do this. Mydumper also is pretty simple. You just need to do this, give it a host. You can use less locking, compressing the file, give them an output dir. And to restore this, you can use myloader. That as well, it's a multi-threading tool to restore that in parallel. You just need to give the host where the files are located, and the -o it's to overwrite the actual tables if they are in place. If you want to do a partial restore, sadly myloader doesn't support that, but in that case you will need to do these steps. You will just need to create another dir, copy all that files there that you want to restore. For example, if you want to restore only one schema, you can copy that there. You don't need to physically copy them. You can use a hard link because there you can see the L option. And then restore with Mydumper from that directory. You will also need to copy the metadata file, as myloader is the first thing it checks that the file exists to validate that it's a good backup. To copy binlogs, this is the simple option. It's mysqlbinlog, store never, run, read from the remote server, and you should give it the first binlog where you want to start. About this, you should need maybe writing a wrapper or whatever. You just need to take care that it's still running, that the last binlog is complete, because it will just copy a full binlog. So if it's for whatever reason stop writing in the middle of a file, you will need to remove it and then start that again. You can manage that for a wrapper. That is, I don't know if there is any public wrapper to do this at this point, but well, you have to play with that. Well, and finally, let's see some tips about backups that are important when we are planning your big solution. At first, you will need to think at most on your restore times, at what kind of restores you will need. And for sure will be all kind of restores for the issues we see at first. You will need to restore restage full servers, you will need to create new slaves, you will need to do partial restores, maybe for a table, move one table to another, restore a couple of rows for a bug or whatever. So one of the recommendations is to have all three kind of backups in place. Try to store them in more than one server or even off-site. Now it's really easy to do that with, for example, S3 or another cloud options. If you will do that, please encrypt that backups. Test your backups. You always will need to test your backups. Don't do that when you need to restore for some outage or whatever, and then you realize that your backups didn't work. Document your restore procedures, script them, and test that scripts, because maybe you will need to restore in a critical situation when you are nervous or you are stressed or whatever. So better if you have all of them documented and you don't need to think at that point and try to resolve things. If you are taking backup from a slave, please run ptable checksum to ensure the consistency of the slave. Backup also your configuration files, your scripts. Do you need to backup everything all this? You need to think on that. If you have really big tables that they are not updated often, you can hard link that tables between one date to another. You can hard link even chunks of the backups if you are using chunk file size to reduce the size of disk of this, and always monitor your backups. Don't only check that the backup run okay, but also that the backup is running. You will see if you have only an option at the end of your script to send you an alert if the backup didn't run okay. If that script didn't run because maybe you have a problem with your Chrome shop or whatever, you will never get an alert of this. So take care a lot of this kind of stuff. So, well, that is all from my side so far. Matt will be now with you speaking about our recent service. Matt?
Yes, I'm here, Max. Great, excellent. So yeah, before we wrap up today and get into the Q&A, I wanted to mention our new offering, the Percona Backup Service. And if you could go to the next slide, that'd be great. What we provide is a managed MySQL backup and recovery offering. So using our best practices and software tools, some of which Max shared in this webinar today, we ensure that your backups run smoothly and reliably. Since backups are stored on your servers on-premise or in your cloud, like at AWS, backup data sets are always available and can be used by you for any restore processes. When it comes to recovery, Percona takes responsibility and manages the production recovery process. For organizations that really that are lacking some of these in-house resources or even just the procedures to maintain a reliable 24/7 backup and recovery plan, the Percona Backup Service can deliver a lower cost. We support any combination of MySQL, whether it's single or clustered environments, as well as multiple backup locations I mentioned earlier, on-premise or in the cloud. And we can offer a custom configuration of your backups, whether it's you have unique needs in terms of the number of backups, your retention policies, how it should be encrypted or not, storage locations, and many other factors. So if you'd like more information, please visit our site, percona.com, for more information about our managed services. So with that, let's move on to the next slide and the Q&A. We have lots of great questions from the audience, and thank you so much for submitting the questions. And if Ryan, another member of the Remote DBA and Managed Services team, the leader of the team, wants to join in answering these questions, I invite him to. But let's kind of begin, Max, and go through some of these. And as a reminder, any questions that we don't get to, we will have a follow-up blog post on the MySQL Performance blog. So don't worry if we don't get to it here. We'll get your answer there on the blog. All right, so Max, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Great, great. So first question. Can Percona XtraBackup send out success or fail email to indicate whether a backup job has succeeded or failed?
No, this is not an option that it's directly do it by the XtraBackup, but it's really easy to add a wrapper around it to take care of that. Also, Percona Backup Service that does have that option. So
excellent.
It depends on you. XtraBackup will not send an email, but
okay.
Yes, we'll show you that.
So when it comes to huge databases, some of our participants here on the webinar asked questions about huge databases. When it comes to huge databases, so Percona XtraBackup versus Enterprise Backup versus LVM Backup, which is safe and fast for those scenarios?
Well, for this kind of database, I would recommend to use Percona XtraBackup. There are also options that we didn't see here because of the time, that it's used to take efficient incremental backups, but for that you will require to run a Percona server and Percona XtraBackup, as both works related. So in that case, you don't need to take a full backup every day, but running incremental backups each bad day and merging them together after that.
Okay, okay. Next question, can we consider a database backup of only tables the same thing if taken using mysqldump and Mydumper?
Yeah, the tables are exactly the same, the info is exactly the same, you will restore the exact same data. You will only take care about triggers and routines that are not dumped by Mydumper, but you can use mysqldump for that. So you will have the complete schema definition for that, and you can restore that in a multi-threaded way.
Great, great. Just a reminder to the audience, please continue to submit questions, and we won't have time to get to everyone, but we will have the follow-up blog post. So is Mydumper supported by Oracle and or Percona, and is it free or does it require additional licensing?
Mydumper, it's at this point it's being developed by Percona by the remote DBA team. It's open source software, so you are free to use it. You don't need any additional licensing. So you can use it whatever you need. You can get the source code. You can add more functionality. You can use it in whatever way you want to use it.
And that tool plays an important role in the Percona backup service, as I'm aware, in that piece of for those types of backups, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, correct. Percona backup service use Mydumper for logical backups to improve restore and dumping times.
Great. Well, can you elaborate about what you mentioned about Mydumper, the one row per line? Does it mean that it's not using extended or multi-row inserts like you generally get with mysqldump? And if so, is it not inherently slower?
No. In the example, well, it's for here, but no. Mydumper it's using a multi-row inserts. The only difference is that in the output they are one row per line, but it's only, it's a multiple row insert for each insert. The only difference is that you have a different line for each row, but it's all in one insert.
Okay. Okay. Now you gave a bunch of really good information on Mydumper, and there was a question about the purpose or the issue with use save points in Mydumper.
Yeah, this option is to help to avoid the metadata locking. Metadata locking, it's one new kind of lock that we have since MySQL 5.5, that it's avoid any DDL to run against one table that it's being used by a transaction. So, for example, if you think on backups, they run in a really big transaction, right? You need this transaction to keep open to the complete time of the dump, right? Because if you not have this, you will lose your snapshot. So for that kind of things, the DDL that it's being used by a transaction, it will lock that DDL and all or the other statement that it came after that. So if a trunket was locked by metadata, and then all the update, inserts, deletes, or whatever that came to that table will be locked as well. What use Second does is to use a workaround that for each table that it's dumped, it's run a rollback. So we are releasing this metadata locking against that table. I said it's reduced and not avoided because during the time you are dumping that table, you can still have this kind of locking. But well, it is reduced in a really big way, right?
Okay, so more on the large data set topic. Is there a best way to take a backup for a large data set of around 600 gigabytes without locking the tables?
Yeah, with both. With XtraBackup and Mydumper, we can take backups with minimal locking time. It could be in cases under the second, right, with sub-second locking. But okay. Yes, you can take both.
So that size data set is perfectly fine for
obviously it will depend on other factors, right, like your I/O capacity, this kind of stuff. But that will depend on times. But we can do that without any issue.
Okay. So on the restore side of things, how do you force a restore backup even if there is bad data in the backup file?
Well, that will depend, right? Because if you are using a binary backup, you can do anything or nothing easy to restore that backup, and in the possible way, it's impossible. But with logical backups, they are simple text files that you can fix in wherever the error is. So should not be any issue. That will depend on the bad data, but they are simple text files, so you can fix that depending on what was the issue, right?
Okay. So a question about binlog mirroring. Why is MySQL binlog mirroring required when we have relay logs fulfilling the same purpose?
Well, the important thing is the position of the backup, right? Not the position of the relay log. So when you need to restore that, you will have a coordinate, right, on your backup. That coordinate will be on your binlog, not in your relay log. So this is important in that way, right? You need the binlog to restore that because you have the coordinates of the binlog, not the relay logs. Also, the relay logs could be already purged or whatever. You should always use your binary logs.
Okay. And so, can you please elaborate a little bit more about binlog mirroring? We've got some more questions about that, but when you might use it, or what purpose does it really serve?
Sure.
As part of the backup solution?
Sure. Yeah. In the case you lose the master, you can still do a point-in-time recovery. In addition, you can do binlog mirroring remotely in a second data center using Percona server features to compress and encrypt the mirroring, so it can be great and not expensive option for setting a disaster recovery by uploading your backups to the cloud, like Amazon S3.
S3, right.
And
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, no, that is the important thing. That it's a really good way to have an up-to-date backup, so in any disaster you have almost until the last committed transaction in your backup, right?
Okay. Actually, I think that's probably all the time we have for questions. But I think I'll just turn it over to Elisa to do the wrap-up. And I thank everyone in the audience for joining us today on the webinar. and Max for your time here presenting this content about backup and recovery.
No, thanks for all you guys for assist here. And any doubt, any more issue, you can write directly to my email address that it's on the slide. Thank you.
Elisa, any closing remarks, Elisa?
Well, just thank you very much, both of you, for your time today. And audience, thank you so much for attending today's webinar. I hope that you found it enjoyed it and you found it informational. And I will make sure that everybody gets a copy of the slides as well as a link to the recording. So thank you very much again, audience, and Matt and Max. And I hope to see everybody on future webinars. Thank you again.